Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
Good. There you are. Now I can see you. Hi. How was work today?
Well, we finalized the paper yesterday, so today I went in and cleaned out my desk.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, the Lakeshore, how long have you been there, Melissa?
Only like a year and a half.
Yeah, but you grew up on the paper, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lakeshore, I don't know about you, but, from my own experience, when I moved to the Wayzata area, it was the paper. Like it had all of the listings for real estate in it, had everything that was going on in town, both in Wayzata and Excelsior and Minnetonka Beach and Deep Haven and Orono, covered those cities like crazy. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense that it's going under, but it doesn't compute. I don't know if that makes.
It makes perfect sense. As someone who has worked, like I understand, the newspapers are changing. Community papers are dying across the country. The model isn't working anymore, but the need for them, and from what I've heard from community members since we announced that we were closing, is there's still people reading them. They want that news because they can't get it anywhere else, but it's just not working.
Yeah, the model seems broken, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's hard to just rely on advertising revenue and subscriptions, especially for a paper like Lakeshore that's voluntary subscriptions. People don't think they should have to pay for a digital subscription or voluntarily subscribe if you can pick up the paper for free.
Yeah. You kind of said that in your story that's going to be published tomorrow. I've read that like 2 or 3 times. I think you're spot on. You start with it's a sad day for journalism in the Lake Minnetonka area and for the Lake Minnetonka area. I think that's absolutely true. What's your feelings? I think this conveyed some of it, but tell me about your feelings about, your job and the paper, and just tell me what's going through your head.
Well, I guess so. I went to journalism school. I wanted to be a sports journalist. That's what I did for my college paper. And then I moved to Boston and I became a regular news reporter. And
Boston's a cool town and sports is cool. So 2 for 2 so far.
And then the Boston Marathon bombing happened and I was working in news and I knew I never wanted to do anything else. But I didn't ever think that I would come back here and work for my community paper. And when I did, I was very happy with the idea of doing that as my job for the rest of my life.
Right.
So to have it end it sucks, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was stressful. We didn't have enough resources. We couldn't write every story we wanted to write, but I still loved it. So
what are some of the stories you'd like to, you wish you would have gotten to?
I don't want to give away my ideas in case I can write about them at some other point.
Okay, that's fair. What do you look back on as some of your best work? What are you proudest of over the couple of years?
Let's see. I guess I won a government reporting award for a story I did on Nancy Edwards, an Orono resident who got into a little bit of a predicament with the city of Orono.
Yeah, it's a great story.
So, proud of that because it was acknowledged from I mean, people outside of Minnesota. I don't know. One of the most fun stories I did, I went out on Lake Minnetonka with the state's only registered underwater archaeologists, and got to see what they do when they dive for wrecks at the bottom of the lake. So that was cool. And it wasn't bad spending a day on the lake in May and getting paid for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story too.
Yeah.
Those guys are using sonar, or I forget exactly what.
Yeah, they start with sonar to find anomalies, and then they dive on those anomalies to confirm if it's like a tree trunk or if it's an old boat.
Right on. Talk about holding officials accountable.
I guess I didn't get to do, or we didn't get to do as much of it as we could have or wanted to, again, with the resource issues. But I think a lot of journalism is being present at events and asking questions if things don't add up. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the key. I mean, people don't understand that it's one of the key elements of journalism, Melissa, is making sure that those who are elected and leading our communities and our counties and our states and our national government are doing what the people ask and acting correctly. So it's I think that's a huge loss for our communities in terms of the Lakeshore. How expensive and how time consuming is it to produce news for people that don't understand?
I guess expensive wise, I can't really speak to that. I didn't do the budgets.
But we can talk about it anecdotally. I mean, you and I can sit down and pencil out, and I'll let you answer the question. I don't mean to interrupt, but why don't you answer the question, then I'll pipe in too. So sorry.
Well, I mean, there are salaries for reporters, editors, advertising people. There's costs for printing the paper, delivering the paper, mailing the paper, all of that. Time consuming wise, I could have worked every hour of every day and still not been able to cover everything. We had me and one reporter for the Lakeshore area. We covered some 18 communities in our paper.
Right.
We couldn't do it because we didn't have enough money to have more than one reporter.
Right.
And then have those reporters still having a life outside of work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just to dovetail into what you're saying too, I mean, and to defend journalism and to defend news organizations just a little bit. And I've been called a semi-journalist, which I guess I kind of wear as a slight badge of honor. I am not professionally trained, but certainly admire and work with some high quality people, and have worked with some high quality people over the years. But office space and utilities, it never supplies. I mean, camera equipment, computers, it never ends. Even from my own experience, so I can relate to some of the expense that goes into it, Melissa. And I think too often there are some in our communities that are kind of too quick to dismiss how much time and energy and effort it goes into producing a single story. I mean, how long does it take you to produce a good quality story about something that's going on in town? And you tell me.
I mean, so let's say we're covering something that's happening in a city council meeting.
Yeah.
So we have to go to the meeting, and that could be anywhere from
like 3 hours,
an hour to like 5. And that's now outside of the normal workday as well.
Right. It's 5 hours.
And that's just to find out what happened at the meeting. And
Right.
then we have to find the people to talk to about it outside of the meeting. The people, whatever they're talking about affects the people who are pushing for this, the people who are against it. And then you have to put it all together. You still have to write it. You have to
into something cohesive.
check it.
Yeah.
You have to take photos. You have to, and that's just for a meeting. If you want to give the story the time it deserves. I mean, there are some city council events or issues that are brought up that can be written about faster because it's either not controversial or it doesn't, I don't know if everyone's in support of it or, you know, that kind of thing. But a big thing that I always try to do with the stories that we put in our papers is add context that so people kind of know the background of the story, but then also add a what I call a why you should care element. So
right.
Include something so the person reading it knows why they should care about whatever you're writing about. Right. And if you don't have that, why are you writing the story necessarily? Like, I think yeah.
Yeah. How was it working for, I mean, towards the end you were owned by Alden Capital, and I think there were a couple of ownership changes over the last handful of years, and maybe you can talk to them and maybe you can't, but you know, Alden, I think Southwest, David Christ before that, and there was some history even before that I'm not familiar with, but maybe you could talk about, you know, what it was like working underneath Alden, because I think everybody reads about the you know, venture capitalists and the vultures kind of swooping down on news. What did you experience and find?
Well, I no longer have a job, so that's probably all I'm going to say about that.
That's the big one.
Their advertising revenue was down before we were purchased. I only worked with Red Wing and then Alden, or what we call it Media News Group. And I mean, changes were going to need to be made in the company regardless of who the owner was. That's just something had to change. I personally didn't think it was going to be cutting two newspapers. I thought maybe combining territories and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I read all the stuff too when I found out who our new owners were, and it made me nervous, and I was preparing for the worst, and then it happened. So
yeah, that's awful, and I'm sorry about that. You know, it's just it's too bad, and I think the community mourns the loss. Maybe not as much as you do personally, but you know, it's a big loss for our community. I went and downloaded your LinkedIn profile. It's right nice. Here. I was really impressed, Melissa. I mean, you know, House of Representatives session writer, Lakeshore Weekly News, senior web producer for television. Is it a television station or?
Yeah, WHDH in Boston.
Yeah. Sports of Boston, the soccer guy. I mean, this is good stuff. What are you going to do next? What are you going to try and do? What are your plans?
I would love to stay in news because I think it's so important. If that doesn't work out or the right opportunity presents itself, I would like to do communications or like PR, something where I can still tell people important stories, I guess.
Yeah. It seems like PR is kind of where it's at in communications for self-publishing. I mean, that seems to be the new model for employment in terms of journalists. I think maybe you could comment on that.
I think, well, I'm going to start with, I was given advice from one of my mentors a few years ago, about a year before I was laid off from a different company because of downsizing, because that's just the way the media industry works. And she said that you shouldn't leave journalism in the news until you know you're ready, because it can be hard to return to the news after you've been a PR person.
Sure.
So I guess that's how I've viewed my career path, to kind of stick with news as long as I can. I mean, freelancing is great. It's hard. And then, yeah, I think once I'm completely burned out, I'll go communications PR route. I think a lot of journalists do that, and you then end up getting paid a lot more than you do as a journalist to work in communications. The creation of the internet helped kill the journalism industry, because journalists, newspapers started putting their products online for free. And then when the way advertising works changed, newspapers had to then start charging people, and no one wanted to. And I think that has kind of snowballed into the state that we're currently in. And I think journalists are paid less because of budget cuts. There just isn't enough revenue coming in to pay the people to tell the facts.
Yeah. Newspaper your final edition hits the stands tomorrow, or I guess we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. Probably when we put this live on the internet, it'll be tomorrow. It'll be Thursday. So, what did you say anything else in the paper to readers, or what can people look for if they're picking up the last copy of the Lakeshore Weekly News?
I think the cover story is very fitting for Lake Minnetonka at this time of year. So hopefully that does the last issue justice. It's about boating and getting takeout in the age of coronavirus.
Oh. Right on.
No, I mean, it other than the goodbye column, it's your typical Lakeshore Weekly News edition. It has news that people need to know about. So read it.
What are you gonna do next? What are you gonna do next week?
I don't really know. Relax for a little bit. Apply for jobs.
Yeah. Well, good luck, Melissa. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Thank you very much for all of your work, and I'll thank you and the people that came before you for all of the work that went into the Lakeshore Weekly News over the years. I know I've known quite a few of them, and I've enjoyed working with them over the years. And so thank you to all of them, and best of luck in your endeavors.
Thank you.